Yo, what's up guys, it's Suraj from Tech Devoted and I've been using the 2GB RAM dark grey Redmi 5A is my daily driver for about 3 weeks now, and in this video I'm going to talk about my experience with it. Spoiler alert, it's been pretty amazing, so if you need just a one word answer to the question whether or not the 2GB variant is any good, yep, I think it's more than good. Now let's talk about my complete experience. So firstly, this does not feel like it cost 5000 rupees. You could easily fool somebody about the price tag of this thing, and a lot of people that I handed this phone to just would not believe that it costs only 5000 rupees. It's no essential phone, it's still plastic all around, but it does not feel cheap by any means. Now in typical MI fashion, the 5A of course has the IR blaster, which is nice to see, but wait for it, there is more. Not only do you have a headphone jack, but there is also a dedicated micro SD card slot. Nope, not a hybrid SIM slot, but a dual SIM plus a micro SD card slot. And MI likes to call the 5A the Desh ka smartphone, and I think the title is apt because, as I said, it has both the SD card slot and the headphone jack. And I feel Indians in particular really appreciate the presence of those things because the Bluetooth earphone culture and the idea of saving stuff to the cloud are, in my opinion, still not quite household-esque in India. In fact, a lot of people that I know prefer using wired earphones from older handsets and don't really buy new pairs that frequently, so it's really nice that the headphone jack is present. Upon powering the phone, you'll be greeted by the 5-inch 720p IPS display, which is pretty good. Viewing angles are good, and so are the colors. However, I do think it's a bit too contrasty. That might be just me, but overall, no complaints. You do get what you pay for, and even though the phone only has a 16:9 display, it feels extremely compact in the hand and is just the right size for one-handed usage. Now under the hood is a Snapdragon 425 coupled to 2GB RAM, and real world usage with this phone was surprisingly just like any other phone I've used till date, but at a slightly slower speed. But at no point did I feel that the phone was falling short, and on a daily basis, in case you're wondering, the apps I use include camera, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, sometimes Lightroom and Snapseed, and it's insane how well the phone handled those apps. You would think photo editing in Lightroom or Snapseed would be difficult, but nope, this phone handled it like a champ. Importing, editing, rendering, it was all extremely smooth. Of course, export times were a bit slow compared to the higher end phones, but that is to be expected. Another must-have app for me is Play Memories Mobile. This is an app that I use to monitor my Sony camera and to transfer pictures from the camera to my phone, and I was surprised that the 5A could handle even this app extremely well. Yet another thing that blows my mind is how well multi-window works. I would say it works as well as the Galaxy S7 that I used a couple of months ago. Now in the whole process of using this phone, I realized 2GB RAM seemed surprisingly adequately enough for day-to-day multitasking. I don't know what sorcery this is, but the whole experience was really smooth and I cleared all apps literally only 3 times in my 3 weeks usage. I guess it's all thanks to MIUI optimization. Now so far I might be making it sound like this is the perfect phone with no downsides at all, but obviously that is not the case. The more you use this phone, the more you realize that the 16GB, scratch that, 10.5GB internal storage is not sufficient at all. I ran out of storage on I think the 4th day of using it. Now as I said, you do have a SD card slot that you can use to insert a card of up to 128 gigs, but you cannot really move apps to the card unless you root, which makes sense. So you'll have to move other things like photos, videos, music, all that sort of stuff to your SD card in order to make space on the internal storage. Now MI does also offer a 32GB storage variant of the 5A that goes for a slightly higher price, and yes, 32GB is a bit more practical, but at that price you're almost entering the mid-range category of phones, so you might as well spend a little extra and get something like a Redmi Note 4 or a K6 Power from Lenovo. Next, let's talk cameras, and if I had to sum up the whole experience in a word, I would use inconsistent. It's weird, even in extremely good lighting conditions, the photos are hit or miss. Sometimes you get a well-exposed image with on-point focus, whereas other times you're left with an image that is extremely soft and has poor dynamic range. But in artificial lighting conditions, surprisingly, it's not half bad. Yeah, the images have noise and the need for OIS is felt every now and then, but for the most part, the images are pretty usable. Same is the story with selfies. They're not great, but they're usable. Now, perhaps my biggest gripe with this phone is the speaker placement. It's on the back, and that often results in it getting muted when you hold the phone in your hand or lay it flat on a table. And not only does that hinder the media experience, but it could also be a potential threat to those of you that like to wake up on time. Not gonna lie, I missed school a couple of times just because of this. The battery life out of this phone is mediocre at best. I consistently got 4 hours 30 minutes to 5 hours of SOT. Now that's a respectable screen on time, but if you know anything about MI, if there is anything they nail with their phones, it's the battery life, but with the 5A, that did not feel like the case. And charging times are also extremely slow, so that did not help either. Let's talk software, and we have the usual affair, MIUI 9 baked on top of Android Nougat, and nothing really new here. We have the typical MIUI with its big fat icons and, not gonna lie, very useful features. But I installed Nova Launcher on day 1, so I don't really have any problems with the software side of things. And I really hope the phone receives Android Oreo because, well, it only makes sense. But I don't know if Xiaomi has promised anything officially about the software updates front. But that is my take on the Redmi 5A, guys. The phone is pretty decent overall, and for 5,000 rupees, I do think it's a bargain. It can make a great secondary device for a lot of people, and it could even be a great primary phone for first-time users or school kids. But that about wraps it up for this video, guys. If you found this review helpful, give it a like. If you didn't like it, let me know why you didn't like it. It's been Suraj. Thanks so much for watching. Take it easy and stay devoted.